Good morning. It's good to see your squares. I'm glad you're with us. Today we're going to get back to the sutras. So we took a week off. Um, and we're actually going to cover two. We're going to talk about Sutra 240 and 241, which are both, we're moving from the yamas, which were about um, practices that are more directed outward towards how we interact with other people, to the niyamas, which are more self-directed. So practices around our um, own care and growth. So the first one of these is Saucha. Saucha often is translated as purity. And in studying Saucha over the years, cleanliness and purity is how it's translated a lot of times in our Western culture. So I'll start there, and then we'll look at the teaching that Swami Satchidananda has in this translation and teaching on the sutras. So what's interesting to me is I'll just read it out loud, and then I'm going to start backwards. So Sutra 240 says, by purification arises disgust for one's own body and for contact with other bodies. By purification arises disgust for one's own body and for contact with other bodies. That's pretty fire and brimstone. So what's interesting is if you read through his discussion, at the very end of his discussion, there's a note from the editor. And it says, this sutra should be understood in the light of a particular stage of discrimination on the part of a spiritual aspirant, where for the sake of the higher goal, one develops a natural disinterest in the body, blah, blah, blah. So even the editor of the translation in this particular one is like putting a little footnote on it, like you have to understand this in the context of the teaching. And I think there's, for me as a student of yoga, reading this, understanding not only the context of when the sutras were originally transferred, which was an oral tradition, to when they were written down, to when they were translated in the context in which they were translated. So if you put that all together, Swami Satchidananda is saying, don't mess around with things that are bad for your body. And specifically, he says, disinterest in the body and in intercourse with other bodies. So don't have sex. Which, I mean, we hear that all the time in other traditions. Be mindful of your relationships with others. So that's a part of it, but that's not really the part that is usually taught when we're looking at the yamas and the niyamas. So in a Western context, in a householder context, what does it mean to be practicing Saucha? I read a bunch of other things, and I've read things in the past about this. And I'm going to read the second sutra because I think it'll put it in better context. So Sutra 41, 241 says, moreover, one gains purity of sattva, cheerfulness of mind, one-pointedness, mastery over the senses, and fitness for self-realization. So if we practice Saucha, if we practice purity, we'll get cheerfulness of mind, one-pointedness, mastery of the senses, and fitness for self-realization. So if we think of purity as being on many levels, purity of mind, purity of heart, purity of body, the sutra is inviting us to not take in things that will take away our purity. So let's just go for the simple one, our body. So we practice yoga, physical practice, to create health in our body. And then we leave yoga and we go home and have a glass of wine, or we go home and eat 2 extra pieces of cake. And if you're like me, you're like, ugh, now I don't feel so good. Right. So we're constantly getting this feedback of what makes us feel good and what makes us not feel good. And the invitation from the sutra is to aim for the purity of the body, the mind, the spirit. And if we do that, we'll be more cheerful. We'll be closer to self-realization. So I think when we think of it in that way, it's pretty straightforward. Like we have probably each of us our own experience of when we're not taking care of our body in that way and what the result is. And there's feedback, right? A hangover, upset stomach. Like we get feedback all the time if we are impure. And so the invitation is to diminish that through the aspiration for a more yogic lifestyle. Where I think meditation really comes in on this is purity of mind and purity of heart. So in the physical realm, we have instant feedback. It's like, okay, I ate too much, I feel sick. In the psychic realm, I said something that was unkind. I mean, we might get instant feedback and immediately feel remorse. We might think about it later and have remorse. If we're practicing mindfulness and we have that pause in the stimulus and the response, maybe where we get is we can intercept that unkind word before we actually say it. Right? So we're practicing purity of our words and purity of ultimately our thoughts that generate our words when we're practicing mindfulness. Right? So first step is awareness. Oh, okay, I'm angry. Second thing is, what am I going to do about that? Am I going to maintain some sense of kindness? Am I going to ask myself, is it true? Is it necessary before I say it? So I'm going to invite us into a practice of mindful awareness with some prompts to notice the spiritual cleanliness of our thoughts. So wherever you are, go ahead and create your posture. Cheerfulness of mind is one of the benefits of these practices. So as you set up for your practice, create a posture that could support cheerfulness of mind. Typically, that would mean feeling safe and stable. And perhaps a little more elevated, physically elevated, upright. Start with your breath. Hopefully, that's a neutral anchor to just come into the present moment, noticing your inhalation and your exhalation. Allow your attention to scan your body for how you're feeling today physically. Just getting a sense of the parts and how they feel. There might be discomfort or sort of a neutral ease. if you find any discomfort, cultivate some curiosity around it first. So, what's actually here? Noticing if there's any sense of wanting to push it away or just allow it. Physical discomfort can make us feel like we have our foot in a trap and create negative energy that might spill out onto others. I'd say that's human, and what we're aiming for is to be able to be with it without reacting in a way that causes harm. So cultivating a neutral reaction instead of aversion. Can we find a way to be okay with what is? And now draw to mind something that you might crave. So, cultivating the sense of desire for something simple could be ice cream, glass of wine, a croissant from auspicious, and notice if there's any kind of grip that comes up from desire, sort of a inner energy. And the invitation is to smile at that and say, "Oh, there you are. Hello, friend. I know you. Can I be with you? Can I just be with this without action?" For me, sometimes it's the last slice of pizza. We get takeout and there's one piece left and I feel great. Do I really want to eat that? And then later it's, wow, I really shouldn't have eaten that. I was feeling pretty good. One of my teachers, Richard Rohr, wrote last week in his weekly digest that all of this practice is towards a pure heart. And it's not about quieting our mind to be neutral zombies. It's about purifying our heart. Saucha of the heart. In my belief system, each of our hearts is already pure, and there's layers of life that cover up that purity. Experiences, challenges, resentments. And these practices are around seeing what's there and cleansing, clearing away the impure feelings and thoughts. Picture your heart center in your mind's eye. Picture a light inside. And maybe it's a small, soft glow. And it just needs a little oxygen, a little awareness to start to burn a little brighter. Picture the brightness of your true, pure heart burning away impurities. Sense that brightness growing into more of your body, taking up more space, your inner brightness. Maybe you sense that brightness expanding beyond your skin. So there's a kind of a light from within shining out. Take in a deeper breath. Do that again, a nice kind of a clearing. And then you're welcome to open your eyes. Questions or insights, comments? All right, well, go shine your brightness out there.